Same rules apply to all. No bias, no double standards, no exceptionalism, and no exception. Each country has a vote, and the world is watching us to see if we can live up to the commitments we undertake and to the principles we claim as ours at this historic and crucial juncture for humankind. Please stand on the right side of history, with international law, with freedom, with peace. The alternative is what you witness every day on your TV screens, and what the Palestinian people are enduring in their flesh. A different reality is possible. It starts now and here. Free Palestine, peace for all, and I thank you.
I thank the observer of the observer state of Palestine. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Israel.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is my first time speaking here at the General Assembly after the October 7 massacre. 11 months ago, a terrorist army invaded southern Israel. In a single barbaric assault on a Jewish holiday, they murdered over 1,000 of our citizens and carried out the most heinous atrocities in modern history. Hundreds of vibrant young Israelis were murdered while celebrating life at a music festival. Hundreds of innocent people peacefully sleeping in their homes with their families were slaughtered. Some burned alive while holding their loved ones, and hundreds more were taken hostage, dragged into a captivity more brutal than anything anyone could ever imagine. Even now, as we speak, over 100,000 Israelis remain displaced within their own country, unable to return home due to the relentless rocket attacks from Hamas in the south and Hezbollah in the north. Perhaps you have forgotten, but we did not start this war, nor did we choose it. We are fighting a war forced upon us. We are fighting for our homes, our families, our future. We fight because we have no other choice. Yet, despite the cruelties we have faced, despite the unprecedented terror unleashed upon our people, this assembly remains silent. I was certain that the first resolution that would be brought before you all would be the unanimous, unequivocal condemnation of terror, the rape, the torture, the kidnappings that took place on that darkest of days. Yet, there has been no condemnation, no resolutions. Instead, we gather here to watch the Palestinians' UN circus, a circus where evil is righteous, war is peace, murder is justified, and terror is applauded. How dare you continue this tradition of passing one-sided resolutions against Israel without even pausing to consider what the Israeli people have endured? Since October 7, this assembly has passed 2 resolutions on this matter. Yet, there has not been one word about Hamas and barely a word about the hostages. Those who contribute to this circus are not simply bystanders. You are participants, enablers, collaborators. Every vote you cast in support of this circus fuels the violence and emboldens those who reject peace. This empty show is not just an insult to the victims of October 7, an insult to the hostages. It is an insult to the very fabric of this institution. You are not promoting today peace and justice. You are dancing to the tune of your ringmasters, the Palestinian Authority. Look at this picture. Look at it closely. Study it. That blood on the floor belongs to 6 beautiful human beings: Eden, Hirsch, Alex, Carmel, Ori, and Almog. That is their blood. 6 innocent Israelis executed in cold blood after months of suffering in this tiny, dirty tunnel where they couldn't even stand, hidden under a child's bedroom. Imagine that being your child, your spouse, your friend. Imagine them for a moment suffocating, starving, bleeding in a dark hole for months. If it were your child, your loved one, would you sit in silence? Would you pretend this was just another story? Or would you scream for justice? Let me say this clearly. Jewish blood is not cheap. The days when it could be spilled without consequence are over. The days when the Jewish people were at the mercy of tyrants are over. Never again will we stand by while our people are massacred. Never again will we depend on your mercy or your judgment to protect us. Thank God that today we can defend ourselves. Today we have the strength to protect our state. Today we have the resolve to secure our future. So instead of condemning Hamas's brutal murder of over 1,200 Israelis, innocent men, women, and children, the Assembly sits silently. In place of this most basic common sense action, this circus focuses on distractions. The process that all other countries usually follow has been abandoned. Where are the negotiations, the deliberations? You have allowed the Palestinians to become the ringmasters, and those who vote for this resolution are playing their part. This resolution distorts the flawed advisory opinion of the ICJ. It ignores the truth, twists the facts, and replaces reality with fiction. It ignores completely. I didn't hear Mr. Mansour mentioning Hamas for the last 30 minutes he spoke here. It ignores the Hamas terror attack of October 7, ignores Israel's legitimate security concerns, and seeks to remove Israel's ability to protect itself. From the beginning, we all know that this process was politicized. This was not a quest for legal clarity, but a predetermined attempt to delegitimize Israel on the world stage. Let's call this for what it is. This resolution is diplomatic terrorism, using the tools of diplomacy not to build bridges, but to destroy them. And what other member state is treated that way? The answer is simple: none. No other country is subjected to such relentless, obsessive abuse. You know, it's not my first term here. I started my first term at the UN in 2015. Since then, there have been 155 General Assembly resolutions condemning Israel. In the same period, there have been only 88 resolutions condemning every other country combined. Combined! Think about the last decade. Think about how many brutal regimes exist in the world. Think about the countless injustices. Yet, the only Jewish state, the only democracy in the Middle East, has been condemned almost twice as much as the rest of the world combined. This is not about justice. It is about an attempt to destroy Israel through diplomatic terrorism. Make no mistake, since October 7, the Palestinian Authority has not condemned the atrocities committed by Hamas. Not one word of condemnation from President Abbas. Not one word from Prime Minister Mustafa. Not one word from Riyad Mansour. The Secretary General of Fatah Central Committee called the October 7 massacre a defensive war full of epics and heroisms. One of the most high-ranking Palestinian officials calling the rape and murder of thousands of civilians epic and heroic. Are these our partners in peace? The PA have offered their unwavering support for Hamas, the world's most despicable terrorist organization. They are its diplomatic wing, its public face, their consiglieres. The Palestinians deserve better leadership. For decades, Hamas has spent its money digging terror tunnels, arming terrorists, and bringing ruin to its own people. Rather than building up Gaza, Hamas has obsessed over one thing: destroying Israel. While Hamas digs tunnels, the Palestinian Authority works above ground, attempting to isolate Israel internationally. There are two sides of the same coin, one attacking with rockets, the other with resolutions. The Palestinian Authority has rededicated itself to supporting the world's most vicious terrorist. This is not an entity seeking peace. It is a regime that glorifies murder while educating its people to do the same. They refuse to denounce the most horrific crimes. They celebrate the slaughter of civilians as a victory. And now, this body is considering rewarding that refusal, rewarding that evil. You are giving a false prize to false leadership. There is only one side in this conflict that promotes genocide. It is the one that promotes it publicly. Let us not forget, Hamas's own founding charter calls, and I quote, for the extermination of all Jews. They proudly proclaim their intent, and I quote, to wipe Israel off the map and hunt Jews wherever they can find them. Instead of condemning the killers, the ones who want to commit a genocide, this resolution condemns the victims. How dare they accuse us of the crimes they themselves are committed to carrying out? This resolution seeks to deflect blame for Hamas's own atrocities onto Israel, which is forced to defend itself. This resolution perfectly represents the priorities of the Palestinian Authority. It slanders Israel, ignores our right to defend our people, and seeks to isolate us. The PA has teamed up with the radicals in the region, posing a grave threat not just to Israel, but to the entire Middle East. But instead of addressing these major threats, some of you support this resolution, which demands that Israel tie its ends. History has shown time and time again that true progress only comes through direct dialogue. Israel has demonstrated this for decades. Wonderful, important peace treaties have been signed with Egypt, Jordan, with the United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain, Morocco. Inshallah, there will be many more in the near future. Trying to isolate and destroy Israel brings nothing but regression. This resolution doesn't move the region forward, it drags the region backward, delaying the hope for peace and advancement. I was here on this podium 6 years ago. I stood in this hall and proposed a resolution to condemn Hamas. But instead of taking action, the Assembly chose to look the other way, allowing Hamas to continue its reign of terror. And now we are all, Israelis and Palestinians alike, suffering the consequences of your inaction. Back then, you chose to support the circus over morality. And here we are again, the same circus, the same performances. But we all know what's really happening here. This is not about peace. This is not about international law. This is about posturing. In the circus of the UN, you can ignore the atrocities that took place on October 7. You can pass resolutions detached from reality. You can pretend you live on a different planet. But in the real world, outside these halls, we are doing the hard work. We are fighting terror. We are working to bring the hostages home. In the real world, there is justice and morality. In the real world, Israel will shape its own future, striving for both victory and peace. Israel will defend itself. We will not apologize for protecting our citizens. We will not stop until Hamas is dismantled, until every one of our hostages is returned, and until the terror that threatens our people is eliminated. Today, this assembly faces a choice. You can choose to stand on the side of justice, on the side of peace, on the side of those who seek real solutions to the region's challenges, or you can indulge this circus, this charade, this political theater. Israel is ready to work with the international community. We are ready to work with those committed to real peace, real security, real progress. Israel will not work with those who refuse to renounce violence and acknowledge Israel's right to exist. Whoever supports this resolution today should be ashamed of themselves. On the day when your civilians, your families, your loved ones are murdered, raped, and kidnapped, do not come to this assembly seeking justice. All you will find is silence. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Israel. I now give the floor to His Excellency Peya Mushelenga, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of Namibia.
Mr. President, allow me to firstly congratulate you on your election as the President of the 79th session of the General Assembly. I also thank you for commencing your tenure by reconvening the 10th Emergency Special Session on illegal Israeli actions in occupied East Jerusalem and the rest of the occupied Palestinian territory at the request of member states. This meeting takes place 2 months after the International Court of Justice rendered its seminal advisory opinion on the legal consequences arising from Israeli policies and practices in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, and for the illegality of Israel's continued presence in the occupied Palestinian territory. Namibia strongly supports and welcomes this advisory opinion, which we believe must be actioned through our collective effort to ensure it delivers for the people of Palestine. In convening this meeting, the General Assembly is, as rendered in the advisory opinion, able to consider precise modalities and further action to bring to an end as rapidly as possible the unlawful presence of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory. The request for this August Assembly to seek an advisory opinion from the ICJ was anchored in the fervent belief that the international judicial system can provide rational advice to assist us in charting the way forward on the question of Palestine, among the oldest unresolved agenda items for the General Assembly. Mr. President, the convening power of the General Assembly must continue to be used as a tool to effect meaningful change. As the world's most representative multilateral institution, the United Nations General Assembly continues to be an apt platform for the articulation of the voices of all nations of the world. We declare unequivocally in this august forum that there is no substitute for peace, and therefore move that Israel should henceforth genuinely commit to ending its 57 years occupation in line with ICJ advisory opinions, General Assembly and Security Council resolutions. We must work in unison, using all legitimate means at our disposal to halt Israel's non-compliance with international law. The resolution tabled before us in this emergency special session is to be considered before an assembly that has repeatedly affirmed its strong support for the inalienable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. The same assembly has also affirmed the right of the Palestinian people to statehood. It is incumbent on all member states to fulfill in good faith the obligations they have assumed in accordance with the UN Charter. Further, member states should take cognizance of the consequential nature of the ICJ advisory opinion, and that jointly and severally, member states and international organizations, including the UN, are ascribed onerous responsibilities. Primary among these responsibilities is the obligation not to recognize the unlawful presence of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory, and moreover, not to render aid or assistance in maintaining the situation created by the continued presence of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory. Mr. President, Namibia has co-sponsored this resolution and will vote in its favor out of the fervent belief that its adoption would signify the international community's steadfast commitment towards ending impunity and supporting the progress towards lasting peace in the Middle East. We believe in exuding responsibility and duty to humanity. Accordingly, we encourage similar conscionable action from all member states. The resolution provides the international community with another opportunity to take a unified position in reasserting the key tenets of international law. Further, it reasserts the primacy of self-determination as an inalienable right that is not subject to the conditions of the occupying power. The resolution also sends a strong message to the world, and most especially to the Security Council, on the desires of the majority of the international community. Council members cannot continue to use veto power to perpetuate injustice and support impunity. More so, not at a time when the people of Palestine are ensnared by stalled ceasefire negotiations and a derailed peace process. While Council fails to execute its core responsibility of maintaining international peace and security, Gaza continues to be obliterated, offering no safe havens for civilians and humanitarian personnel. Infrastructure, including medical facilities, continues to be destroyed viciously, demonstrating callousness by the occupying power. Equally, the situation in the West Bank continues to deteriorate daily. This is particularly worrisome. The international system must offer more than mere words of solidarity to the people of Palestine. It is high time that tangible steps are taken to oblige Israel to end its atrocious attacks on the occupied Palestinian territory. In conclusion, Mr. President, Namibia will continue to tirelessly champion the cause for the total liberation of Palestine. We are pleased to see Palestine seated among the family of nations and will continue to call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. the full membership of Palestine to the UN, and a renewed vision of a two-state solution that will enable the reconstruction of Gaza, leading to an independent Palestinian state, a safe Israel, and peace in the Middle East. I thank you.
I thank His Excellency Minister for International Relations and Cooperation of Namibia. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Cameroon, who will speak on behalf of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation.
Mr. President, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the group of member states belonging to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in my capacity as the chair of the group. Mr. President, let me begin by commending you for the resumption of the 10th Emergency Special Session. There is no doubt that the present editions of the session, which were dedicated to addressing the grave humanitarian condition in the occupied Palestinian territory, have achieved positive outcomes, giving 3 landmark resolutions adopted by this august assembly since October 2023. The resolution on the need for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and elsewhere in the occupied Palestinian territory, and global support for the admission of Palestine as a full-fledged member of the United Nations have justified the residual and complementary role of the United Nations General Assembly within the context of the maintenance of international peace and security. The group think that it is deeply regrettable that despite the hopeful expectation following the adoption of the Security Council Resolution 2728 on March 25, 2024, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, the human rights and humanitarian calamities in the occupied Palestinian territories have worsened. The death toll, predominantly women and children, has tragically reached an unprecedented number of 41,680. Additionally, over 1,525 people were injured and hundreds of thousands were displaced following the destruction of their homes, hospitals, and heritage and cultural sites. In view of the foregoing and given the grave threat to peace and security resulting from the long war-torn Middle East crisis, for our group, it is high time that practical measures be taken to end Israel's illegal occupation of Palestine. Accordingly, our group reiterates the call by the OIC on member states of the United Nations to exert diplomatic, political, and legal pressure and take necessary deterrent measures to stop the crimes against humanity, war crimes, and ethnic cleansing committed by Israel, the occupying power, on the occupied Palestinian territory and Gaza. In this connection, our group welcomes and commends the objective of this emergency special session to consider an urgent follow-up action on the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice on the legal consequences arising from Israel's policies and practices in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, as well as the illegality of Israel committed